All right, we are live. Jeremy, how are you?
Um, I'm doing okay, Carson. I guess not as much going on in my world as you and yours. Hey, Carson.
Oh,
Shit. There's not as much going on. My world is. Let's mute the
yeah.
mute the YouTube version there and not. Uh, yeah. So there's so many directions to go. I guess I've listened to most of the other recent talks that you've had. Um, so I don't really want to tread the same ground. But I guess the main thing that I'd want to bring up is this. I didn't know I was going to say this right away, but now maybe I should. That the age that you're at right now is pretty close to the age I was at when I was at um, a very low point. And right around where I experienced this not instantaneous, but this kind of quickly following upon itself, series of events. This this process that in keeping the popular expression, I have called a midlife crisis. I guess it's what somebody who's not married and doesn't have enough money to buy a Lamborghini does when they have a midlife crisis. But I what that transition is mostly like is a letting go of the self-oriented things that I am chasing. Thinking I needed to be as good looking as I could be. I needed to have as much career success as I could have, and above all, that I needed to find as amazing a girlfriend and eventually wife as I could, and have a family and be conventionally successful. And the chasing of those things was it was like It's like trying to move a huge amount of sand with a teaspoon or something like that, right? It was like it was chasing something that was always gaining ground on you, right? And the process in my life that involved my going vegan, but include other things. That kind of more generally involved my embracing consequentialist ethics and not feeling embarrassed about thinking that I was a tiny consideration amongst the world, the human and non-human beings that matter. So it principally involved my going vegan, and also my becoming an effective altruist and donating somewhere over 10% of my income, despite my having pretty significantly lower income than almost everybody who's involved in effective altruism. I still do it. I still spend a lot of time thinking about which charities are most effective and adjusting those decisions. And it's also getting towards the time of the year where I'm thinking about A Christmas Carol a lot more again, and what story means to me. So I guess we want to center our conversation around is this approach that I think you're taking to yourself and your place in the world, where you kind of want to get everything right with the self first. You want to be like the healthy and the well established, I guess like financially secure, ideal weight, ideal physique, ideal father to your family. You want to get that checklist of personal things done, perfected before you're going to move on. And I think that's a huge mistake. I know this might sound like some kind of hubris or some kind of pretense, but I think that is precisely by letting go of the primary importance of those kind of things, and putting the world first, that the burden of those personal issues with myself dissipated. And so that I just want to put that an offer for you. I think maybe the thing that you're chasing and hoping that get completed before you can start worrying about this broad range of others,
Yeah.
is something that it can never be completed. That's what I think.
Yeah. I
You'll
don't.
you'll be digging that hole forever if you start there.
Yeah, I don't view it as something that needs to be completed. I'm just viewing it as something that I want to do along the way. So like uh, it's the reason that I'm not, consuming like animal flesh aside from fish, um, and other things, is because even though I haven't achieved this section of my life or this section, I still have I still have all my stances on what I will do and what I won't do and what's right and wrong and who I will help and who I won't help and different things like that. So I guess I kind of just view it as I have a handful of things that I view as most important, and then the list goes lower and lower after that. Um, Similar to if you were going to make a donation on a certain morning and you were running out of time because you slept in and you need to get to work, you're going to prioritize getting to work so you don't lose your job, and then you'll make the donation later. So yeah, I have things that I view as most important. I look at the rest of I look at the world. I look at like what I care about, what I'd want to help fix, and then I look at myself and my life. How long will I be here? What can I achieve? And I don't know exactly like what's on the top of any list. Like I if I was going to go to the park with my daughter today and skipping that meant I could do some activity that saved millions of people, I would skip it because I know I can go to the park with her on different days or whatever. Um, but I wouldn't necessarily do that if it meant I couldn't see her for the next 20 years. And so I just have to look at the different priorities. And so for me, I like to plan. I like to plan ahead, and so I can see other humans and what they're like when they're 70 and 80, and people that go in and out of hospitals, and what different activities, what people consume when people are overweight and stuff like that. How that will affect their future. I look at grandparents with their grandkids, and when they're unhealthy, they're unable to catch up with them. They'll play with them a little bit, but the grandkid will want them to roll around on the ground and they can't. And to me, and I don't know how much of this has to do with whatever amount of free will that I accept that we don't have, but when I look at that, that is what the thing in me that I can't control tells me I want. I look at that and I go, I can recognize I don't want that when I'm that age. And then I do everything in my power to work towards that. So that's the health side of things.
Yeah, I get it. So Jerome and I have occasionally talked about honesty, uh, honesty and consequences, especially in the context of moral activist movements. And and we've agreed to some extent that um, something like things like you have recently acknowledged this causing all of this reaction. Um, that saying it publicly probably causes more harm than just doing it privately, right? And that takes down a rabbit hole. It's lost on me that I'm kind of being honest and saying, I'm saying maybe not telling everyone and providing this ammunition for anti-vegans, a couple of whom you regularly have in your comments. By my saying that it would have been better to if you were doing this temporary, less than morally ideal thing to not broadcast it. By my saying that it might have been better to lie. I'm doing this meta honesty now. maybe I'm giving fuel for the anti-vegan troll to assume that anybody who claims that they never consume any animal products is probably just lying, right? Since Jeremy said that saying the truth about bad behavior might be worse than lying, and probably most of these people are lying. I'm not lying. Okay, there's another lie. But he says he's not lying. He's doubling down on his lie.
Yeah, well, here, let me respond to that real quick, because I mean, I think we probably agree with even though that might be the best outcome, it is good to set a precedent for not lying, but I also have reasons outside of that. I talk to many different people, and a lot of them that are 100% not vegan, that in their hearts and minds are like, they already say, oh, I wish I didn't do it. I wish there was a law that made me not be able to do it. But because they were raised doing it, they just do it completely, and they just wish they didn't. So I think for people like that, it's very important to see somebody say, like, it's not all or nothing. It's not that vegans are great and then not vegans are all this lump of people that suck until they won't suck someday. There's choices that all humans make at all times, and some are good, some are bad, and we can work towards making more and more moral choices. And so I think even though it could be bad, it could give ammunition for anti-vegans. Not that that means much of anything. It could make some vegans like maybe it could sway some vegans to be less vegan. I hope not. But I think what it could do is, if enough people weren't being crazy about this kind of thing, and then people that were on the fence about being vegan that are thinking about it, or even people that weren't thinking about it at all, that now can hear somebody that isn't saying, I don't consume any animals and this is the right thing. Hearing somebody say, I do consume a couple things here and there, but I know that my actions are morally wrong. And then they'll go, wait a minute, this person's saying the actions they're currently admittedly doing and going to do tomorrow are wrong. Wait, let me ponder this. And so I think I don't think I'm doing any like great amazing thing, but I think it could be beneficial for the larger amount of the population to hear ideas about, oh, I could stop harming these animals that are tortured the most. And in
Hmm.
this case of like pasture raised eggs, whatever, and then they can bring it to their own level of what they want to do. I hope every single non-vegan in the world right now just stops consuming chicken because of how, and pigs, and
Hmm.
keep eating beef for all I
Right.
care. It's like work towards causing less harm and look where most of the suffering's happening and stop that. And so, anyways, I'll stop rambling, but I think that that's where there is a benefit.
Yeah, it might end up that way. Um, it's ultimately, an empirical question of social psychology. What kind of effect people who have a public face have? Um, if the primary effect of somebody's social media presence is to get large number of people to switch um, from consuming chickens bodies to larger animals that um, have a much lower negative ethical footprint, then yeah, I do think that's a move in the right direction. Um, I particularly think that well, I guess one of the major disagreements I'm going to have with you is regarding very very delicious and convenient quote unquote processed uh, plant-based meat and cheese alternatives. Um, yeah, I think very obvious psychological reasons. These are crucial in having uh, fast and long-lasting practical impact, together with with chefs and online resources and restaurants that are preparing these sort of products in innovative ways. Um, they're they're at the forefront of uh, changing the world in a direction where more and more people are gonna make the morally better choices. My the main point I want to emphasize that we're not top down creatures of reason primarily, that like get get convinced abstractly of the true creed, the true principle, and then that dictates all of behavior. Uh, it's more often the case that behaviors get changed, and then when a new routine is established, when a new set of habits in place, then the conscious moralizing press secretary of the brain changes its explanation. So things like like Challenge 22 Veganuary that just say like we're going to try to get people out of their animal product eating diets for a month, eating plant-based with these coaches. Once people do that, both because their habits have changed, like their shopping, their knowledge about shopping for plant-based foods, just their overall awareness, they can get enough calories and nutrients from plants, but then also like their biome changing, and then the subconscious feedback that these different populations of the bacteria are giving them about what seems appetizing and what seems disgusting. When you get that sort of thing changed, then it becomes much easier for most people for their conscious ethical reasoning to fall more in line with that. That's just a psychologically, scientifically reasonable way of approaching the humans that we're trying to change. I think so. I get what you're saying in terms of trying to appeal to the reducitarian impulse. It's an ethical consequentialist. So getting a lot of people to reduce is good. In the first place, it's good, and getting multiple people to reduce is quite likely better than getting one person to be completely vegan, unless that complete vegan is going to go ahead and do effective advocacy activism as well. Because what ultimately matters is the quantity of the decreased demand, and the effect that it has on the animals. But at the same time, I think that by perpetuating the idea that some animal protein, some animal products are important in a diet, I think that people who still have that in a diet and have that kind of gut flora and that kind of training of their senses are going to be subconsciously more attracted to the full range of animal products, and then more likely to create rationalization for going back to eating
that might
the
be true,
chicks
but
and pigs on the road.
I just want to comment on one thing you said real quick. I think more importantly than getting multiple people or any number of people to reduce would be getting multiple people to think about it to the level where they themselves recognize it as wrong. Where they, because most people eating animals don't think of it as wrong. Like Phil is a perfect example. Phil is like from like a diet perspective of what we think of is basically just very much not a vegan. From my own perspective of how I view the idea of if people only ate for health and then no animal products for something else, I like the idea of even calling them a vegan, but I'm a weirdo. So separate from me, just from your average person, how they view that kind of thing. Phil is a person that recognizes that it's immoral and he's choosing to do it for his own health. And that's such an important thing because it means his choices are going to be well thought out. And most people that eat animals do not think of it as wrong at all. So they don't think of it in any way. They'll eat unhealthy things that come from animal products. They'll overeat from animal products. They'll do various different things. They're not thinking about the idea of reducing or cutting back on chicken and pigs for the moral reason and eating more cow or going hunting because hunting's more ethical than factory farming. I think what's most important would be relaxing on the telling people either go vegan or you're a bad person and get people to think about it. Get them to, the best thing to do is to have them give their answer for why it's morally acceptable to eat animals. The only answer that'll make any sense is for them to say for health. And then you can say, okay, well, do you think this and this and this is healthy? And they'll have to say no for chicken nuggets and ice cream and all that. And then when they say no for that, say, okay, well, do you at least accept that it's morally wrong to do that and you're just doing it because you're addicted to it and all that stuff? And if you get those conversations going with honest people and you get millions of people to be like Phil and like myself now, I guess, because I'm eating some fish and eggs, and you like people that eat animals but think about it, then every time they're at a store and they're pondering stuff and everybody else around them, if it becomes a more acceptable, talked about thing, then the only answer of how people's choices are going to affect this is a lot of people will slowly just go vegan over time, and then the rest of those people that view it as immoral are going to get to the point where they're doing like what I'm doing or to a different extreme of what Phil's doing, where they'll only consume animal products for health, and then that just cuts things down. Like imagine a world where everybody ate animal products only for health. So many trillions of billions of animals dying and suffering would be cut down because people would just eat in reasonable amounts. They wouldn't be eating all the deep fried stuff and all the unhealthy stuff. And then everybody would be fit and healthy. And some of them would be healthy Brian Johnson types, but some of them, they might even be like carnivores or something. But if they're not overeating and eating specific animals that are tortured in certain ways, but most people would probably just eat a lot of fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, and then a small steak or something like that, or some sardines. And anyways, it's just wild to me how much most vegans push that idea. They just like set it so far, like, no, that's part of the bad too.
Yeah, this goes right back to my original point. I don't think that the typical human is very good at this kind of it's kind of like objective list egoism, like doing the kind of selfish things that are like rationally justified, make the ideal self or something like that. Yeah. Health, whatever else. That's just not how the typical human operates, in our social species. Like, we didn't make the forms of moral progress that had made it in the past by prioritizing the idealized ego, and then saying by becoming the idealized man in myself, the perfected man, the strongest, healthiest, most competent individual man, I will thereby not be racist, because racism doesn't have a part in that idealized man. And so, by having this perfect the ego focus, I will incidentally oppose racism. Like a secondary. No, that's not what happened. What happened in our social species is that the social norm of being opposed to racism as part of our collective bonding with others is like the primary driver against racism. Not anti-racism's incidental connection to the perfection of the self. And
yeah, but it just happens to not align. Like, sorry to cut you off, but like, if being racist made somebody a better human, and by better I mean just at how I view being human is what humans are capable of, being good at what your species is, and I would view being at a healthy weight, having a healthy amount of muscle mass, these various different health things as being a good human. If being racist for a little bit of time helped with that, then maybe that would be reasonable. But in my mind, for me personally, well, hold on, hear me out. For my mind, me personally, it has to be a good mathematical equation. So the pasture-raised eggs at this point, the fish, the mathematical equation of the harm and the bettering of myself as a human happens to mesh well. Hold on.
That's what you're wrong. That's what you're.
Well, hold on. I could be wrong. That might be true, and that's the whole point of conversations like this, and just all kinds of learning and thinking things through. But if I had to go and be racist to people that could comprehend what I'm saying, and that added a few health points to me, I probably wouldn't do it. But if I had to go be racist to some people that had mental issues that couldn't comprehend what I was saying, and the only harm I'm having to experience is people of, say, my own race experiencing me being racist to these mentally handicapped people, and that's giving me health points, hell yeah, I'm taking it. I mean, there could be a downside to that too, but I'm just pointing out when you make the action, you put the harm at a lower level, and then you put the benefits at a higher level. That's just where I'm at. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I understand trade-offs, but what you're doing is you're talking about the perfectibility of the kind of being that we are, and the kind of being that we are is profoundly social and intersubjective. I've thought this before when you talk, kind of survivalist mode, like, you know, if civilization is collapsing or whatever, I would do whatever I can to protect myself and protect my daughter, you know. And then if there's a situation of like largesse, you know, there's extra resources, well then, you know, you might consider like giving some to other people. That's insane. The naivety of that kind of perspective is staggering in any kind of in any kind of mass disaster collapse scenario. Anybody who makes it known to other adults, look, my perspective is I am never going to give a fuck about your daughters until every important need is met for my daughters, and then in a case of an abundance of resources, then I will start to consider you and children. That person is immediate exile. What's going to happen to you? Your incredible, naive, ridiculous, egoist perspective is a group of men who do know how to become a band of brothers and agree to risk their own lives to protect each other's daughters. Are gonna kill you and take your stuff.
No, I think
that's
you
what's
misunderstand.
Gonna happen in that scenario.
Well, no, I think you misunderstand me,
because the ability to form a local altruistic community that expands the circle is not dispensable. It's utterly essential to survival.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And
that was actually going to be my reaction to. Yeah, that was going to be my reaction to you. I completely agree. When you first started saying the thing, I was going to say that's what all animals do, from my understanding. And logically, it's what would make sense, is that you would get together in a group where you feel like the people within the group can take care of each other, can do what the resources will work for them. And what works for humans, because we are so intelligent, we were able to start big societies and have buildings and work with money and all this kind of stuff. But most animals are out in the wild working in small groups, taking care of their own small group. So when I say my daughter, my wife, my family, my mom, you know, and I'm talking about my, that's the smallest part of the group. But to make that realistically work, to take care of them, I would have to include this family, and this family, and then we would have a tribe, and so on and so forth. Luckily, I prefer the tribe of the entire society. But I'm just saying, like I will give some of my food to people in the tribe because the tribe is helping me survive. I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. But I don't think that anybody would view the other people in the tribe as valuable as the people that are directly their ancestors and descendants and so on and so forth. I don't know. I'm just going off the top of my head, but I think it'd be something like maybe a group of chimps or something where they have like 20 to 50 people in this area. You know, I'll stop rambling. But yeah,
you should read Singer's The Expanding Circle.
Okay.
The Expanded Circle. You know, caring about humanity globally, and then caring about non-human sentient beings. You know, he describes, and I agree, is it's at once like the statement, like the capstone, but also the progression of civilization. It's the step that we're at, you know. Well, a long time ago, we were at the step of tiny bands of immediate family coalescing into clans, and then clans became towns, and towns became city states, and city states became nation states.
Mm-hmm.
And then there started to be people thinking in terms of all of humankind, and then people thinking about the well-being of all sentient beings, thinking about global moral health.
Would they be able to think about any of these things if their bellies weren't full?
No, and that's the point. That's the point. You know, that's like saying it's like saying that you object to you object to skyscrapers because they wouldn't be built if everybody was starving. You know, that's
well, no. I mean, not everybody has to be in a certain situation. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the higher stage of moral development, like it doesn't lose its justification because people would abandon it if all of the scaffolding were suddenly taken away. You know, the point is that is a higher level of development based upon that scaffolding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, real quick, I just want to say, yeah, I think it might come across as I'm saying something that I'm not. I do like to break things down into what I care about most, but that doesn't change what I care about overall. So I personally, because I have some wildly high range of empathy, and I didn't choose that. I just happen to have it. I care about anything that can feel pain or suffering at all. So that's humans, animals, so on. So I happen to care about that. Now there are probably some people that, without their choosing, they don't. They don't see why. They are just living life. They didn't do anything wrong. But in their mind, if you were to ask them that question, they'd say like, why would I care if anything suffers? And then so even those people can be told like, do you like to suffer? And they'll go no, and it'd be like, so even though you don't care about the suffering of other humans and animals, can you make your actions align this way where you can recognize that other humans and animals wouldn't want to suffer? So even those people, even if I was one of those people, which I'm not, I think you're right. I think that the actions people take, as long as they can be reasonably convinced. So somebody that couldn't suffer and also didn't recognize suffering in other people, they get a pass because they shouldn't be convinced to care. But anyways, it's kind of a complicated idea because I don't know how much of free will falls into this. But I happen to be somebody that does care, and I'm not going to do nothing. I don't do everything perfectly, but I do care, and I will help as many people as I possibly can. I would never be a billionaire because if I ever was a billionaire, I would just be helping everybody to the point where my money would just go back down to nothing. And I hope that I can always be the best me I can be. And yeah, I'll stop rambling there. I had something
I think
else, but I lost
getting
it.
close to your time limitation.
Got about 10 minutes, yeah.
So yeah, I just personally for you, I want to bring it back the idea that that by letting go of more and more uh, things that you need to achieve on an individual level, life can tend to become a lot freer, and then a lot of this individual things can more or less automatically become better, become easier as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you started off saying like that's not what you're doing, but I kind of think it is what you're doing because of how your recent comments have talked a lot about, you know, specific weight and your specific physical goals, you know, about your life. And I sense that there's this personal insecurity, and so I do want to say that I don't think that you will ever achieve success in that domain.
Well, just to make the conversation easier. Hey, well, Jeremy, one sec. I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
I'm kind of an honest person to a fault, and so just to make the conversation easier, and hopefully you accept what I say as honesty. There's no insecurity. There's no care. I mean, there's hardly a care about looks and anything like that. I think that does affect how people treat people, and that would be a good way to feel good throughout life. But my stances are specifically health related, which have to do more about how I personally feel and my capabilities of doing actions that will make me be able to interact with others better, like you know, like grandkids and that kind of thing. The actual care about what I look like as far as weight goes or any of that, if it were healthier to be like the largest person in the world, then that would be what I'd be striving for. So just so you can know in your mind when trying to ponder why my actions are what they are, it's not about looks or how people perceive me.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, I don't know what to say. What else would I say? Do you not like tofu, or do you have some kind of hang up of tofu being processed?
No, I don't. I mean, in a sense, I do. I like that. I have some like personal interest in being able to process things myself if I needed to. I wish I could grow the soybeans and do the processing myself.
Okay,
But it's kind of complicated. No, I don't. It's just
do you think there's something that more this? I don't even understand what this word means. It's a non. It's one of these like. It's not what I normally mean magic words, but it's a stupid word. Processed. You know. Do you think tofu is reasonably described as processed in any way that like a cleaned up, you know, chicken breast in the supermarket is not processed? Is the tofu processed to a larger extent?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't eat chicken, so I haven't really looked into what happens to chicken. But no, I think you're right. There's probably some like in the sense of like processing could even include the harvesting and all that. It's kind of complicated. But yeah, I don't know as
and
far
is it
like,
bad that the tofu? Is it bad that the tofu, you know, having like some of its fiber removed, you know, but making it like more palatable, more protein dense, you know?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, that's
is
such
it
a
bad?
complicated.
It's said calcium or magnesium. Is that bad? You know,
Yeah,
these useful nutrients.
I really don't know. It's such a complicated area of topic. If we're talking, what I will say I'm convinced of is that over-consuming calories seems to be largely what causes people to be overweight, gain weight, get visceral fat, and whatnot. And so,
Oh yes.
what I've noticed with tofu, the only thing I can say about tofu at all is if I were eating tofu, I'd be more likely to be frying it, and therefore I would be making it more
Uh,
hyper palatable. And so that's a downside. But yeah, no, I've made tofu
like
scrambles where
baked as
there's
well.
no frying, and there's so many different approaches. I have nothing against tofu. It just over 20 years
Mhm.
doing different things. I've eaten tofu for most of my adult life because I've been vegan for a good portion of my adult life, and I love tofu. I don't have anything against tofu. It's just that this current stage of attempting to get rid of what I view as addictive foods, this was just something I've tried for, and there's various reasons behind it. It's not just the addiction, but yeah, I just as far as unhealthy, it's so complicated. Like I'm no expert, but what I will say is the hyperpalatable idea of foods making it to where you're consuming like a wild amount. That all comes down. It seems to come down for most humans. I don't think this is arguable for most humans. It's processed food. The I don't know in Korea. There's probably not a lot of overweight people in
Okay,
Korea,
but
but in most
process.
places,
You think that semina pasta is processed food, right?
pasta, yeah, whole grain pasta,
Uh,
yeah. Because
okay.
you get a healthy spaghetti sauce and you put it on a full cooked box, a pound of pasta, like a huge amount. I take that down in one tiny sitting because it's hyper
Uh,
palatable. It just like if you were eating like spoonfuls of like grains have different names, like oats are groats, and then I think wheat is berries,
mhm.
wheat berries. If you cooked wheat berries the way you could cook brown rice or something, and you just had this plain pile of wheat berries, and you were just bite after bite trying to eat it,
Mhm.
imagine how much quicker you can let pasta slide down
Yeah.
your throat than the bear. So, anyways, it's just it's what I'm observing, at least for myself. But it
So when
seems like for most
you eat that
people,
fish, you eat it raw with like the head and all the skin and stuff and all the bones.
of course. Um,
You do.
uh,
You don't
no.
process it by removing the head and the bones and stuff
um,
and heating it up. You don't process that
correct. I do
to
not.
make it more high palatable in its original state.
I make sure to not make it extra palatable. Um, I pretty much only consume it when I by putting it into like soups. I boil it. I don't fry it. And
Mm. That's how
yeah,
I eat most of my tofu. By the way, big slab of tofu dropped into the spicy soup. That's a normal Korean way. There's not oil involved in most of my tofu consumption. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but uh, I, I'm okay. So yeah, the other thing in my life besides being vegan is being car free and walk everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I love that. Um, that's the new urbanism, um, car free movement is the one that I'm a part of. Um, it helps in Korea, but while I'm staying in the U.S., um, I tend to be put myself in a car free situation and walk as much as possible. So you're not car free, right?
I am not car free. I could
With a
probably be
big pickle
convinced to go
in
that
bag
direction.
and a big impact on your weight and health. Right?
Hmm.
So, giving up Impossible Burgers and switching to, paying for the death of sentient beings is important, but I think about what I know of Salem. I've been a few times, but yeah, it's not gonna be a bike friendly city, right? But that's just sort of an automatic thing that you talk about. If you're talking statistically about America's health, then obviously an enormous culprit is the car dependency and the design of so many cities and suburbs to make it unavoidable, right?
Again, I'm no expert, but from my understanding, all the experts will say you cannot exercise out a bad diet. There's no amount of moving you can do that's going to affect your bad diet. And so if I'm wrong there, show me. But also, I am trying to be more active. I got a
Well,
little
I don't
watch
think
thing. I try to.
I don't think you can exercise it away in a gym by blocking out hours to hit the gym. But I think that the time spent walking and biking and not being in super convenient access to food is part of that picture. So I think people who say that exercise can't make the difference, they're thinking of like normal lifestyle to block out time in the gym. They're not thinking about people who are living a life where they're spending significant time in the day, like moving, not in a car where they could have a burrito in their hand. And it's the entire lifestyle that takes you away from convenient consumption for greater section of your day.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and I got you. First of all, I don't really drive that much. Second of all, I'm not against, like, I think vehicles and transportation are good for a handful of things, but I'm actually the type of person, I live in Oregon. I don't know if you've been here, but it's so beautiful here, and I don't even have any need to travel outside of here. But, I like to go hiking. I do rock climbing as a hobby. I like to go swimming. I spend most of my time being active, and when I'm eating well, the mixture of being active and eating well, I notice a lot of a change. I developed a lot of muscle in the past month and a half of doing really well on both. But anyways, I would love to talk to you more about the car thing. But I do got to run in a sec, but I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly. And I think you will. But your answer doesn't mean that I'm doing anything right, because I'm not, right? We both recognize that.
I'll answer it in a way that I believe will produce the maximal consequences for my listeners.
Yes, you're not allowed to lie here.
Go ahead.
Okay, so before I ask this question, we can just both say that the actions I'm doing with fish and eggs and whatever is immoral. We both agree on that, right?
Yeah, less. I mean, with caveat that I'm a scalar consequentialist, so I don't believe that there's any threshold of obligation. I think that you could be doing more better.
Right. There you go.
I think that I don't believe you that you wouldn't be doing just as well with tofu and tempeh and chickpeas in their place. So.
Well, yeah, I just want to make sure that you knew that the question I'm about.
Yes, I think you're making a moral mistake because there are obvious superior alternatives.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you
that
knew that
I believe would work for you. And I don't trust your claim that your implicit claim that those would work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. I was only asking that so you could know that this next question, the main question I'm going to ask you, is not connected to the idea of just justifying my actions or anything. I'm just curious about your answer. In the past, we have talked about which actions are worse or not, like how eating factory farmed beef would be better than eating factory farmed chicken or pork. Hunting would be better than a lot of different things. When it comes to the idea of fishing, let's ignore the idea of huge nets catching dolphins and all this kind of stuff. Just the idea of fishing where the fish is in the ocean doing its thing, and then at some point in its life, there's a hook. It gets on the hook, it's out. And then it wiggles a bunch until somebody kills it, and then they eat it. Is there anything on the list of factory farming that would make fish not be the most ideal thing to eat? Like, so we got fish at the top, and then probably beef or something. We have pigs and chicken at the bottom.
Incest,
is there anything?
probably.
Okay, just out of the
I
standard
think there's so much doubt out. I mean, like culturally standard. I mean, the big problem is people just accepting the current cultural status quo. But if you're asking, if you're asking what's feasible, then sure, I wonder whether like locally raised earthworms that are like fed just compost, like local leaves or whatever. The depending upon the very tricky, but clearly really low level of sentience of earthworms, which I was just saying to Has Vegan in our talk, it's like acknowledgement of the low sentience and relatively low weight of invertebrates, like ants and earthworms, is basically implicit in the behavior of like all vegan activists. Like I said, Has like there's not people doing direct action hen rescue sanctuaries to save the earthworms field that the hens are eating. That's ridiculous, because obviously the hens have like a far greater sentience and greater moral status than earthworms. There's no fucking vegan that you'll find like in the activism movement who in their behavior is acting as if one earthworm is equal to one chicken or one pig.
Well,
so yes, obviously,
just because of time, let me.
Obviously, so Carson, obviously, I can imagine like this kind of like local farming of earthworms or something like that, ants, that is morally superior to the crop deaths that are involved in the harvesting of wheat and corn and rice. I can. I'm not saying that I necessarily like assent to that, because there are veganic ways of growing plants, and then especially I also said this with Has, with crop deaths, there's the issue that most animals that are killed in harvesting might have had even worse deaths naturally. Tend to be like fast reproducing species that are going to eventually like starve or cannibalize each other.
Mhm.
So it's not always clear that like crop deaths are causing net harm. But if the crop deaths, to the extent that the crop deaths do cause net harm, then sure there could be non-vegan insect sources of protein that could be morally better than the typical way that we get our plant products. Yeah. But I don't think that's true of fish, because I think we have, strong evidence that fish have a high degree of sentience, and even in the best case, suffer a lot. The way that they're caught.
No, and I agree, and I'm not trying to justify it. I just find it fascinating, especially like in the rare cases where some person that eats animals might say, if I were going to cut out something, what would he cut out? And the only things I really have talked about, and mostly with you, is that eating factory farm cow would be better than eating factory farm chicken or pig. But just as far as like having a wider range of looking at things, as far as what people do consume on somewhat of a regular basis, when it comes to non-vegan things or vegan things, I would say the least of any worries probably would be something like honey. And then the next least of worries would be something like pasture. Well, let's leave honey out for a second.
Well, I would say bivalves seem
but I don't
lower
consider that.
than bees.
Yeah, right? I don't consider bivalves to matter in any way, so I was leaving them out.
Especially, because like bivalves, in terms of the nutrient trade-off, and they're lower sentience than bees, and they provide significant source of nutrients. Where honey is just like a sugar source. You can get equivalent sugar sources from plants in a whole bunch of ways. There's like no reason for honey to be a trade-off that anybody chooses, I think. Mm-hmm. I would say that also, so it's not some far-fetched new thing of eating bugs, but if somebody actually thought that they, for whatever their personal reasons, they weren't their life was going to be terrible on only plants, this tiny percentage of humans that I think that would meet that criterion. In Korea, there's already a side dish, relatively regularly consumed, and also kind of like a snack. You see beachfront stands of silkworm pods. So, in terms of the ranking of badness on non-vegan things, silk is clearly way down the list of moral badness.
Would you say that?
But yeah, so and I guess I think that it's super protein and nutrient dense. So if you don't want to eat only plants, then go to your Korean grocery and get some cans of silkworm paws, and don't eat fish.
I'll have to look into that. Just curious, so just a really quick double check. If you had to guess, in case you don't have the information, but maybe you do, would you assume that fish are less sentient than mammals in general?
I don't know that I'd conclude that the most sophisticated sentient fish is less than the least among the mammals. I guess you mean at adult age of development, right? Because
Yeah, like
Like
imagine like the hook that's in a fish's
like
mouth.
I was
If you had a
like
hook in a
a
cow's
50
mouth
year
or a
old
chicken's
carp,
mouth. Hmm.
like a really old like fish, like carp that I don't think they ever like die of old age. So some of them are really old, um, and they engage with lots of members of their own species and other species. Like, yeah, I think they're more sentient than bay mammals. You know, compared to an adult mammal, you know, it's that gets trickier. But there are a lot of really fish that have really complex behavior out there that makes me think that they've got a rich inner world. Um,
Hmm.
I, you know, my sense is that larger dividing line is like somewhere in the middle of the insects. Like some of the more complex insects probably have substantial inner lives, but then I I think I think that especially the eusocial insect like ants, um, I think there's a really good case to be made that individual ants act mostly kind of similar to the way individual neurons act. So it's probably something like consciousness going on in an ant colony, but not an individual ant. Like the so if you're not morally concerned with an individual neuron in a mammal's brain, then you similarly shouldn't be concerned with an individual ant, but maybe you should be with an entire ant colony because the ants are like they're like sharing this like local information and the real like processing, the real cognition that's going on is at the level of the of the entire colony. If that makes sense. So yeah, I think in the insects, I think
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean
insects like the
it
mold
doesn't fully make sense,
generation.
just because I'm not too familiar with it, and I don't know if I fully follow what you're saying. But I would just say that the ability to feel pain is kind of my main concern, and so adding together, like if ants say don't really feel any pain at all or much
Yeah.
pain at all, then the
Well,
idea of a million of them together is a million's worth of pain. I still would look at
in
it
terms of
more
that,
individually.
so there's a couple things like Michael Humer regularly points out that insects, many insects will do things like when half of their body is smashed, the other half of their body will continue doing what it was previously doing. Like it won't even stop, and um, and like no vertebrate does that, right? Fish doesn't do that. A
Hmm.
fish doesn't like continue like nibbling the thing it's nibbling if you like, smash the back half of its body, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing makes it pretty clear that like all vertebrates doing something like what happens to us when we experience incredible trauma, right?
Yeah. Well,
Something like that pain reaction.
Michael Humer also says that fish don't have the sensor in the brain that mammals do that detects
Mhm.
pain. It doesn't mean that they don't detect pain, but they don't have the
Yeah,
same sensor in the brain or whatever. It's just interesting that you brought up Michael Humer and um,
yeah, yeah. I remember that, but yeah, the fish do at least have like clearly proto pain in their reaction to physical trauma
mhm.
that insects don't. Um, some other invertebrates do, so there's clearly like this convergent evolution, like octopuses. Um, but yeah, think I think clearly Um, there are a lot of empirical questions um, about suffering or other negative kind of experiences that vegans should take seriously, and because ultimately that's where moral justification comes from, not some arbitrary definition based upon taxonomic kingdom. And if you start doing that, like people who I'm sure watching this hating me, they already hate me, I already hate them. Okay. Like they're just opening themselves up to the what about plants though kind of argument from anti-vegan trolls, because they started it by making their standard arbitrary and not based on something objectively reasonable, like capacity for suffering. Yeah, but so the other thing, and Humor has mentioned this too, since we've talked about him. The other thing about farming worms or something like that is that presumably the conditions that they'd be kept in would be like, to even whatever extent that had any kind of sense at all, the conditions that they'd be kept in would be like good for them. All right. Earthworms were just like rotating around this tank that was fed with all this organic matter, compost and stuff. Like they'd be as happy as any worm anywhere, right? Which is, and this is practically like this imaginary scenario that a lot of meat eaters want to say, what if chickens were given like perfect happy life? And like, no, they aren't. They never will be. It would never be profitable to do that. Chickens, but with earthworms, yeah, it plausibly is. Earthworms going to be happy as the earthworm is going to be in a rotating cylinder full of compost.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
They don't have these sophisticated brains with sophisticated needs, right? Like mammals and birds do.
Yeah.
Like a lot of fish do.
Can you send me a link to either what's written or podcast or whatever of Humor talking about earthworms? I'm curious to check that out. But I do gotta hop off here.
Yeah.
Sorry. But anyways, it was a great talk, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I guess we'll be just going in the chat, and I look forward to your talk with other people. There's a lot more that I haven't gotten into, but I think I covered some new ground that was different from what your previous talks had covered. I think Dillian covered a lot of the really important vegan ethical ground that I didn't feel any need to repeat. But
yeah,
I do agree with him on a lot of those things. And yeah, I just I don't think you need to keep eating. I don't think you need to keep eating fish and eggs.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing I'll end with you is,
I don't think it's going to last long, just so you know. But go on.
That's good to hear. I definitely, this already. I hope everybody who knows anything about me knows this, but it's really obscene to be more morally outraged by somebody who's causing much smaller harm just because they previously called themselves vegan. Still do. And much angrier at somebody like Carson than you are at all the people walking around you every day who are eating like tons and tons of animal products, consuming animal products for clothing, other things, not giving a shit about it. You know, that's ethically insane to spend so much of your outrage on the smaller harm than on the much larger harm. But yeah, so the last thing, you need to go. But you know, I am a home chef. You know, I'm pretty good cook. I cook all the things. I know how to prepare plant products in lots of ways, and keep up with a lot of the vegan chef channels, and have used a lot of their recipes and invented a lot of my own. And so, if you're confused about how to prepare vegan staples in ways that don't use a lot of oil or a lot of sugar or salt or whatever, then yeah, message me about cooking, and I'll teach you some stuff.
All right, sounds
I'm not trying to maximize health in my cooking most of the time, but I do know lots of techniques that don't involve a lot of the ingredients you'd be trying to avoid, and I can challenge 22 you, man. If you want to do whole food plant-based for a month, and you want me to tell you what to cook that tastes delicious, I can fill your month with recipes.
Awesome.
I promise.
You should just don't even wait for me to ask. Just send a couple things my way because I'm curious what you do. You should film a what I eat in a day video and let me see it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Then I go ahead and pack calories with ethanol.
The beer. Gotcha. Oh man. Okay. Well, I really do gotta hop off. It just got to the exact minute I gotta hop off. But love you, man. Have a good one.
Love you too.
Take care.
Ciao.